She was still wearing her wedding dress when he handed her the divorce papers. 6 hours. That is how long Olivia Bennet was married before her husband looked her in the eyes and said he loved someone else. Someone who was sitting in the third row at their wedding, watching, waiting, smiling. But here is what Julian Mercer did not know when he walked out of that honeymoon suite. He did not know that Olivia was carrying his child. He did not know that his family's darkest secret
dear.
was about to be exposed.
You didn't actually
And he
think
did
you could
not
win,
know
did
that
you?
the woman he just destroyed would rise from the
I'm
ashes
so
and burn
sorry,
his entire
James.
empire
I
to the
promise
ground.
I'll be better.
This is not just a story about betrayal. This is a story about a
This is
pregnant
our
woman
moment to
who lost
redefine what is
everything in one
possible,
night and fought
not
back
just for
against
ourselves,
a billion-dollar
but for
family
the
who tried to
generations
steal
to
her
come.
baby. What happens next will shock you. If you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever been told you were not enough, this story is for you. Stay until the end. Trust me, you do not want to miss how this ends. And if this story touches your heart, leave a comment telling me your Phoenix moment, the moment you decided to stop surviving and start fighting back. Like this video so more women can find it when they need it most. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because stories like this one drop every week. Now let us begin. The crystal chandeliers of the Pemberton estate cast a warm golden glow across 300 guests as Olivia Bennet took her first step down the aisle. Her ivory gown, hand-sewn with 10,000 seed pearls, whispered against the marble floor like a promise. This was the moment she had dreamed about since she was a little girl pressing wildflowers into her grandmother's Bible. Julian Mercer stood at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his custom Armani tuxedo. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and when their eyes met across the room, he smiled. But something in that smile made Olivia's stomach tighten. She brushed the feeling aside. Wedding day nerves. Every bride felt them. She had read about it in at least a dozen bridal magazines during her 6-month engagement to one of New York's most eligible bachelors. Her father had passed away 3 years ago, so she walked alone. Some guests whispered that it was bad luck. Others thought it was romantic. Olivia thought it was fitting. She had built her life on her own strength. Why should her wedding day be any different? As she reached Julian, he took her hands. His fingers were cold despite the warmth of the September evening. She noticed him glance briefly towards the third row of guests. But when she tried to follow his gaze, he squeezed her hands, drawing her attention back. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were perfect. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Julian kissed her with what felt like genuine passion. The crowd erupted in applause. During the reception, Olivia floated from table to table, accepting congratulations and compliments. Her cheeks ached from smiling. Her feet throbbed in her designer heels, but her heart felt impossibly full. Her best friend, Rachel Torres, intercepted her near the champagne fountain. Rachel was a divorce attorney with a sharp tongue and an even sharper legal mind. She had been skeptical of Julian from the beginning, but tonight even she seemed willing to admit that maybe, just maybe, Olivia had found the real thing. Rachel caught the bouquet during the traditional toss, then immediately handed it to a passing waiter. She laughed and said that she was a divorce attorney and that thing was cursed in her hands. Olivia laughed too, genuinely and freely. This was the happiest night of her life. She noticed Julian stepping away from a conversation with his grandmother, Eleanor, his phone pressed to his ear. His expression was tense, but wealthy families always had business emergencies. She had learned that quickly during their whirlwind courtship. By 11 o'clock, the reception was winding down. Guests were filtering toward the valet station, trading air kisses and promises to do lunch soon. Julian found Olivia near the exit, his hands settling possessively on her lower back. "Time to go," he said. "The car is waiting." Olivia hugged Rachel goodbye and whispered that she would call her from the honeymoon. They were spending 2 weeks in the Maldives, staying in an overwater bungalow that cost more per night than Olivia used to make in a month. The Peninsula Hotel's presidential suite was everything a honeymoon suite should be. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Manhattan skyline. Fresh roses perfumed the air. A bottle of vintage champagne sat chilling in a silver bucket beside a king-size bed scattered with rose petals. Olivia excused herself to the bathroom to freshen up. She stared at her reflection in the mirror and hardly recognized the woman staring back. Mrs. Julian Mercer. Mrs. Olivia Mercer. She practiced the signature in the air with her finger. She felt a wave of nausea roll through her. Too much champagne, not enough dinner. She had been too nervous to eat all day. She splashed cool water on her face and took a steadying breath. When she emerged from the bathroom in the silk negligee she had bought specifically for this night, she found Julian fully dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed. His bow tie was loosened. His jacket was folded over a chair. But he had not undressed for their wedding night. On the coffee table in front of him sat a manila folder. "Julian," Olivia's voice wavered. "What is going on? You look so serious." He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there turned her blood to ice. There was no warmth, no love, no hint of the man who had swept her off her feet 6 months ago. His expression was the one she imagined he wore in boardrooms when he was about to destroy a competitor. "Sit down, Olivia. We need to talk." Those words, the 5 words that never preceded anything good. She felt her pulse quicken, her hands grow cold. She did not sit. She could not make her legs move. "What is in that folder, Julian?" He picked it up and held it out to her. His hand was steady. "Divorce papers," he said. "I need you to sign them." The room tilted. Olivia grabbed the back of a chair to keep from falling. Her mind rejected what she was hearing. It could not process it. They had been married for less than 6 hours. The rose petals were still fresh on the bed. "This is a joke," she whispered, "some kind of terrible joke." "Tell me you are joking. I wish I was." Julian stood, pacing toward the window. "I made a mistake, Olivia. I thought I could do this. I thought I could make it work. Convince myself that what we had was enough. But I cannot. I cannot live a lie. A lie. Our entire relationship was a lie." "No," he turned to face her, and for a moment she saw something like regret flicker across his features. "My feelings for you were real, at the beginning. But I was already in love with someone else, and I thought marrying you would fix it. I thought I could choose the right thing, and eventually my heart would follow." Olivia's legs finally gave out. She sank into the chair, her $1,000 negligee suddenly feeling like a costume. A costume for a role she had been cast in without knowing there was even a play. "Who is she?" Julian's jaw tightened. "Vanessa Cole." The name hit Olivia like a physical blow. Vanessa Cole, Julian's executive assistant, the woman with the perfect blonde hair and the predatory smile who always lingered a little too long at company events. The woman Olivia had dismissed as a harmless flirt because surely Julian would never. How long, Olivia heard herself ask. 2 years. 2 years. They had only been together for 6 months, which meant he had pursued her, proposed to her, and married her while actively in love with someone else. Olivia felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart, something deeper, something fundamental to her understanding of reality itself. She was at the wedding, was she not? Olivia's voice came out flat and hollow. "That is who you kept looking at. Third row, blonde hair, navy dress." Julian nodded. "I needed her to see that I tried, that I really tried to choose the right thing." Olivia laughed then, a broken sound that echoed off the suite's high ceilings. "You invited your mistress to our wedding so she could watch you marry me. And you think that makes you the good guy in this story? I never said I was the good guy." Julian moved toward her and she flinched back. "I know I handled this wrong. I know the timing is terrible, but I could not keep lying to you. You deserve to know the truth." The truth. Olivia stood abruptly, her legs somehow finding strength in her fury. "The truth is that you are a coward, Julian Mercer. A pathetic coward who ruined my life because you do not have the spine to make a decision and stick with it. Get out. Olivia, please let me explain. Get out." The scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. "Get out of this room right now." Julian grabbed his jacket without another word and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "The papers are straightforward. I have made sure you will be compensated fairly." Compensated. He was talking about her dignity, her dreams, her entire future like they were items on a balance sheet. The door clicked shut behind him with a finality that seemed to echo through the entire suite. Olivia stood frozen for a long moment. Then slowly, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, she sank to the floor. Her wedding gown pooled around her like melted snow. The rose petals on the bed mocked her from across the room. She did not cry. The hurt was too deep for tears, too vast for any single emotion to contain. She just sat there watching the city lights blur through the windows, wondering how everything she believed about her life could have been so completely, utterly wrong. Her phone buzzed with an incoming notification. She almost did not look, almost left it there on the dresser where she had tossed it hours ago when she thought her biggest concern was whether the photographer had captured her good side. But something made her reach for it. Some instinct that whispered this night was not done destroying her yet. It was an Instagram notification. Someone had tagged her in a post. The photo showed a woman's hand, perfectly manicured, displaying a stunning diamond ring. The caption read, "Some things are worth waiting for." The account belonged to Vanessa Cole. The photo had been posted from the wedding venue 20 minutes ago, while Olivia was still in her wedding dress, and the comments were already flooding in. "Congratulations. Finally, you deserve all the happiness." About time he came to his senses. Olivia stared at the screen until it went dark. Then she curled up on the cold hotel room floor, and finally, she began to cry. Olivia woke to sunlight streaming through windows she had forgotten to cover and a pounding headache that had nothing to do with champagne. For one blissful moment, she did not remember where she was or what had happened. Then it all came crashing back. She was still on the floor, her wedding dress twisted around her like a shroud. Her face was tight with dried tears. Her phone had died sometime during the night, which was probably a blessing. She forced herself to stand, to move, to function. She found the hotel robe and wrapped it around herself, then plugged in her phone. While it charged, she stared at the room service menu without seeing it. She was not hungry. She might never be hungry again. The phone came alive with a flood of notifications that made her stomach turn. 47 missed calls, 218 text messages, countless social media alerts. She scrolled through the texts first. Most were from Rachel, increasingly frantic. The last one read, "Oh, where are you? Call me now. It is all over the internet. All over the internet." Olivia opened Instagram and felt the floor drop out from under her. Vanessa had been busy. The original ring post was just the beginning. Since then, she had shared a carefully curated series of photos and screenshots painting a very specific picture. A picture in which Olivia was the villain. There were alleged texts between Julian and his friends in which he described Olivia as obsessive and unstable. Screenshots of emails supposedly from Olivia, threatening and unhinged. A tearful video where Vanessa described how Olivia had threatened her at the wedding, how Julian had been trapped in a marriage he never wanted because Olivia had faked a pregnancy scare months earlier. None of it was true. None of it had happened, but it was detailed and specific and presented with the kind of polished production value that made lies look like documentaries. The comments were brutal. Poor Julian finally free from that psycho. She always gave me crazy vibes. Vanessa and Julian are literally perfect together. That other woman was just a homewrecker trying to trap a rich man. Olivia dropped the phone like it had burned her. This was not just a divorce. This was a coordinated destruction campaign. And it had been planned well in advance, probably while Olivia was getting her final dress fitting, probably while she was writing her vows, probably while she was lying in Julian's arms believing every lie he whispered in her ear. She called Rachel. Her friend answered on the first ring. "Where the hell have you been? Are you okay? Tell me where you are, and I am coming right now. Peninsula Hotel, presidential suite." Olivia's voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat and mechanical. "I am fine. You are not fine. Nobody would be fine. I am on my way. Do not open the door for anyone except me. Do you hear me?" Rachel hung up before Olivia could respond. The next hour was a blur. Olivia managed to shower, to change into the clothes she had packed for the morning after her wedding night. Jeans and a cashmere sweater. Comfortable travel clothes for the flight to the Maldives that she would not be taking. She packed her bag mechanically, leaving the wedding dress in a heap on the bathroom floor. She could not look at it, could not touch it without feeling like she might shatter into pieces too small to ever put back together. Rachel arrived with coffee and fury. She swept into the suite like a force of nature, immediately pulling Olivia into a fierce hug before stepping back to assess the damage. "Okay," Rachel said. "First things first, have you signed anything?" "No." "Good. Do not sign anything. Do not say anything to Julian or anyone from his family. Do not post anything online. As of right now, I am your attorney as well as your friend. Everything you say to me is privileged. Rachel. Olivia sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. I cannot afford an attorney, especially not one as good as you. Rachel waved her hand dismissively. Pro bono, you are my best friend, and that slime ball humiliated you. I would pay to take him down. Now, talk me through exactly what happened last night. Olivia told her everything. The cold smile, the manila folder, the confession about Vanessa, the Instagram post. With each detail, Rachel's expression grew darker. 2 years, Rachel repeated when Olivia finished. He was having an affair for the entire relationship, and he still went through with the wedding. Why? I do not know. He said he thought he could make it work, that he was trying to choose the right thing. Rachel made a sound of disgust. The right thing would have been not proposing in the first place, or calling it off when he realized he could not go through with it, not marrying you and then serving you divorce papers before the wedding gifts were even unwrapped. Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. What is it? Rachel's voice sharpened. My bank. Olivia opened the notification with trembling fingers. Julian removed my name from our joint account. Yesterday, before the wedding. Rachel grabbed the phone, scrolling through the alert. That calculating piece of garbage. He planned this, every single step. Olivia's personal savings account showed a balance of $3,400. Her rent on the small apartment she had kept just in case, a decision that now seemed impossibly wise, was $2,800 a month. I have enough for 1 month, Olivia heard herself say. Maybe 2 if I eat ramen exclusively. Rachel was already typing on her own phone. I am going to bury him. I am going to bury him so deep that he will need an archaeological team to find his career. Another notification buzzed. This one was from Olivia's employer, a marketing firm called Whitfield Associates. The message was brief and devastating. Please contact HR at your earliest convenience regarding an urgent matter. Olivia called. She was put on hold for 12 minutes, then transferred to the head of human resources, a woman she had never spoken to directly in 3 years of employment. Miss Bennett, the woman said. Her voice was professionally sympathetic, which was somehow worse than if she had been outright hostile. I am afraid we need to discuss your position with the firm. I have been on the account for 3 years. My performance reviews have always been excellent. This is not about your performance. The woman paused. I am sure you understand that Whitfield has significant business relationships with Mercer Capital. Mr. Mercer's grandmother sits on our board of directors. Olivia closed her eyes. They are making you fire me. I am so sorry, Miss Bennett. You will receive a generous severance package. 2 months' salary plus any unused vacation time. We will provide a positive reference for future employment, limited to confirming dates of employment and job title. Rachel was gesturing frantically, mouthing words Olivia could not quite make out. It did not matter. The damage was already done. I understand, Olivia said quietly. When is my last day? Effective immediately. We will have your personal belongings shipped to your home address. The call ended. Olivia set down the phone and stared at the wall. In less than 12 hours, she had lost her husband, her reputation, her money, and her job. Everything she had spent years building was gone, not crumbling slowly, but demolished in a single calculated attack. Rachel was pacing now, furious energy radiating from every step. We are going to fight this. All of it. The defamation alone is worth millions in damages. Fight with what? Olivia's voice was hollow. I have $3,000. The Mercers have $3 billion. By the time any lawsuit made it to court, I would be living in a cardboard box. There are contingency attorneys. There are ways. Rachel. Olivia looked at her friend, really looked at her, with eyes that felt 1,000 years old. I need you to stop. Just for a minute. I need you to stop planning and scheming and let me fall apart. Because if I do not fall apart now, I'm going to break at a moment when I cannot afford to. Let me have this. Please. Rachel's fierce expression crumpled. She crossed the room and sat beside Olivia on the bed, pulling her into her arms. You are right, Rachel whispered. I am sorry. Fall apart. I will be right here to help you put the pieces back together. Olivia buried her face in her friend's shoulder and sobbed. She cried for the wedding that was a lie. She cried for the honeymoon she would never take. She cried for the future she had imagined and the man she thought she knew, and the version of herself that had been naive enough to believe that love conquered all. When the tears finally subsided, she felt hollow, but strangely lighter, like a fever had broken. "I need to get out of here," Olivia said. "I cannot stay in this room another minute." "Your apartment." "My apartment." "Yes, my sad little studio that I kept paying rent on because some part of me never quite trusted this was real. Turns out my paranoia was the smartest thing about me." Rachel helped her gather her things. They left the wedding dress where it lay on the bathroom floor. Let housekeeping deal with it. Let them wonder what tragedy had unfolded in the presidential suite. Olivia was done carrying the weight of Julian Mercer's lies. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a new life. The lobby was busy with people going about their normal days, oblivious to the fact that Olivia's world had ended. As they stepped outside, a wave of nausea hit her so hard she had to grab Rachel's arm to stay upright. "Whoa." Rachel steadied her. "When did you last eat?" "I do not remember. Yesterday morning, maybe. We are getting food in you immediately. There is a diner 2 blocks from your apartment. Pancakes and bacon and about a gallon of coffee." The nausea passed, but Olivia made a mental note. She needed to take better care of herself. No matter how broken she felt, she could not afford to get sick on top of everything else. She did not know it yet, but her body was already keeping a secret that would change everything. A secret that was just beginning to grow, cell by cell, heartbeat by heartbeat. A secret that Julian Mercer knew nothing about. 3 weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless days. Olivia existed more than lived, moving through the motions of survival without engaging with any of it. She woke up. She ate when Rachel forced her to. She scrolled through job listings without applying to any of them. She avoided the internet entirely after the first week, when the hashtag Justice for Julian started trending. The world, it seemed, had decided she was the villain, and no amount of truth could compete with a carefully constructed lie backed by unlimited resources. Rachel came by every day, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with Wayne, always with determination to pull Olivia out of her spiral. But even Rachel's relentless optimism was starting to show cracks. "You need to leave the apartment," Rachel said on day 22. "The walls are starting to grow mold from all your depression breathing." "That is not a thing. It should be. Come on, we are going for a walk. Fresh air. Vitamin D, remember those? They are good for you." Olivia let herself be dragged outside, squinting against sunlight that felt too bright, too aggressive. The October air was crisp, carrying hints of wood smoke and dried leaves. Normal smells, normal life. It all felt foreign, like she was visiting a planet she used to live on. They walked to the small park near Olivia's apartment building. Children played on the swings while their parents watched from benches, scrolling through phones. A couple walked by holding hands, and Olivia looked away. "Have you talked to a therapist yet?" Rachel asked gently. "No." "Oh, I know, I will. I am just not ready to talk about it with a stranger. I am barely ready to talk about it with you." Rachel nodded, letting the subject drop. They sat on a bench overlooking a small pond where ducks paddled in lazy circles. "I have been thinking," Rachel said carefully, "about what comes next." Next. The word felt meaningless. There was before Julian and after Julian, and the after stretched ahead like an endless gray highway leading nowhere. You cannot stay frozen forever. At some point, you need to start rebuilding. New job, new apartment maybe, somewhere with more than 400 square feet and a radiator that actually works. New life. With what money? The severance from Whitfield was gone. Half went to rent, half to the legal retainer Rachel had insisted on, even though Olivia suspected Rachel was not actually charging her. Survival. I might have an idea about that. Olivia turned to look at her friend. Rachel had her scheming face on, the one that usually preceded either brilliant legal victories or terrible decisions. "Remember David Park from law school? He runs a boutique marketing firm now. Started it about 2 years ago. Doing him really well. He owes me a favor." "Why does he owe you a favor?" "I got his sister out of a very messy divorce. Pro bono, obviously. Long story. The point is he is looking for someone with exactly your skill set, someone who can take his firm's digital presence to the next level." Olivia felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. She quickly tamped it down. Rachel, every potential employer in this city knows my name. Vanessa made sure of that. They Google me and they find crazy stalker who trapped billionaire in fake pregnancy. Nobody is going to hire that person. David does not care about gossip. He cares about results. And I already sent him your portfolio. You did what? He loved it. Rachel grinned, said your work on the Riverside restaurant campaign was, quote, some of the most innovative social media marketing I have seen in years, unquote. He wants to meet you tomorrow, if you are available. Olivia opened her mouth to protest. To list all the reasons this would not work, could not work, was probably just another setup for disappointment. But Rachel cut her off. What do you have to lose, oh? Worst case, he says no, and you are exactly where you are now. Best case, you get a job and start putting your life back together. One step at a time, one step at a time. It sounded so simple when Rachel said it. Fine, Olivia said finally. I will meet him, but I am not getting my hopes up. You are allowed to have hopes, oh. That is not a crime. Not yet anyway, Olivia muttered. Give the Mercers time. The next morning, Olivia put on her best blazer and took the subway to a small office building in Chelsea. Park Media occupied the top floor, a bright, airy space with exposed brick and plants in every corner. It looked nothing like the corporate sterility of Whitfield Associates. David Park was a slight man in his early 40s with kind eyes and an easy laugh. He shook Olivia's hand warmly and ushered her into his office. The meeting lasted 2 hours. They talked about marketing trends, about social media algorithms, about the changing landscape of digital advertising. Not once did David mention the scandal. Not once did he bring up Julian or Vanessa or any of it. At the end, he offered her a job. It is not going to pay what you were making before, David said apologetically. We are still a small operation, but there is room for growth, and I think you could help us get there. Olivia accepted before she could talk herself out of it. She left the building feeling lighter than she had in weeks. It was not a complete resurrection. The salary was barely half what she had made at Whitfield, and her reputation was still in ruins. And she still woke up every night from dreams where Julian was laughing at her while the world burned down around them. But it was a start, a single step forward on that endless gray highway. She stopped at a pharmacy on the way home to pick up vitamins. Rachel had been nagging her about her pale complexion, her constant exhaustion, her apparent inability to keep any food down. The nausea had gotten worse over the past week. Olivia assumed it was stress, her body processing trauma, the physical manifestation of having your entire life destroyed in a single night. But as she stood in the vitamin aisle, her eyes drifted to a different section, a section she had no reason to look at, a section she actively avoided whenever she went shopping with Julian because he always made comments about not being ready, about waiting until the time was right, about there being no rush. She counted backward in her head. Her last period had been. She could not remember. Sometime before the wedding, surely. She had been so busy with planning, so consumed with details, she had not been paying attention to her own body. She grabbed a pregnancy test, then 2 more different brands, because she was nothing if not thorough. The walk home took forever. The stairs to her 4th-floor apartment seemed to multiply. By the time she locked herself in her tiny bathroom, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely open the first box. 3 minutes. 3 minutes of sitting on the cold tile floor, staring at a plastic stick, waiting for her life to change again. The first test showed 2 pink lines. She took the second one, then the third. All positive. Olivia sat on that bathroom floor for a very long time. She was pregnant, with Julian's baby. The man who had destroyed her life was now biologically connected to her forever. The man who had called their marriage an inconvenience would have rights to this child. Legal rights, parental rights, and worse, so much worse, was the timing. Vanessa had accused her of faking a pregnancy scare. If Olivia announced she was pregnant now, everyone would think it was a desperate bid for attention. Another manipulation tactic from the crazy stalker ex-wife. The narrative Vanessa had created would only grow stronger. She thought about her options. She could tell Julian, demand child support, use the pregnancy as leverage in the divorce proceedings. But the thought of seeing him again, of giving him any power over her or her child, made her physically ill. She could not tell anyone. Have the baby quietly, raise it alone. But could she really keep a child's secret from its father forever? Was that fair to the baby? Was that even legal? She could not even finish the thought. No, whatever else happened, she was keeping this baby. That was not a choice. That was a certainty, settled deep in her bones before her conscious mind even finished processing the options. She called Rachel. I need you to come over, Olivia said when her friend answered. Right now. What is wrong? You sound weird. Nothing is wrong. Everything is wrong. Just come over, please. Rachel arrived in 20 minutes, slightly out of breath from running up the stairs. She found Olivia still sitting on the bathroom floor, surrounded by 3 positive pregnancy tests. Oh, Rachel breathed, sinking down beside her. Oh, Olivia, I am 8 weeks along. Maybe 9. I do not know exactly. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. What are you going to do about it? I am keeping it. Olivia's voice was steady despite everything. I know the timing is terrible. I know this complicates everything, but I want this baby. I already love this baby, and I am not going to let Julian Mercer take one more thing from me. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, her expression shifting from shock to determination. Okay, she said, then we do this right. We document everything. We keep meticulous records of your prenatal care. We do not tell Julian or anyone connected to him until we are ready. Why not just never tell him? Because he will find out eventually. These things always come out, and when he does find out, we need to be 10 steps ahead. We need to control the narrative this time, not react to whatever lies Vanessa decides to spin. You think she will try to use this against me? I think Vanessa Cole has already proven she will do anything to destroy you. A baby is just another weapon in her arsenal. We need to be smarter, faster, and better prepared. Olivia looked down at her still flat stomach. Somewhere inside her, a tiny heart was beating. A tiny life was growing. A tiny person who had no idea the chaos they were about to be born into. I'm going to protect you, she whispered. I promise, no matter what it takes. She did not know yet how hard that promise would be to keep. 3 months passed in a blur of morning sickness, late nights at the office, and careful, calculated silence. Olivia threw herself into her new job at Park Media with desperate intensity. She arrived early, stayed late, and produced work that exceeded every expectation. David Park went from impressed to slightly concerned about her work-life balance, but he could not argue with results. In her first 90 days, she landed 3 new clients and increased engagement on their existing accounts by 40%. The money was tight, but manageable. She found a cheaper apartment in Jersey City, a small 1-bedroom with a view of the Manhattan skyline that she could almost appreciate on good days. The commute was longer, but the rent was half what she had been paying, and the building had a doorman which felt important now that she was going to have a baby. Rachel had become her unofficial pregnancy coach, appearing at every doctor's appointment with a legal pad full of questions and a fierce protective energy that made the medical staff slightly nervous. At the 16-week appointment, they learned it was a boy. Olivia cried in the examination room, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the grainy ultrasound image. A boy, a son, a tiny person who would call her mom and depend on her for everything and deserved so much better than the mess she had made of her life. She named him in her heart that day. James, after her father. James Marcus Bennett. No Mercer anywhere in sight. The secret was getting harder to keep. Her stomach was starting to show despite her best efforts with flowy blouses and strategic jacket placement. Rachel bought her an entire maternity wardrobe from Target, and they spent 1 weekend figuring out which outfits were most likely to disguise her growing belly. You cannot hide this forever, Rachel pointed out gently. At some point, people are going to notice. I just need to make it a little longer, until I have more savings, until I am more established at work, until I feel like I can handle whatever Julian and his family throw at me. Rachel did not push. She understood that Olivia was operating in survival mode, taking each day as it came, not letting herself think too far ahead because the future was too terrifying to contemplate. The scandal had died down, at least publicly. Vanessa had moved on to other targets, other social media campaigns. Julian had apparently retreated to the family compound in Connecticut, and there were rumors he was taking a leave of absence from Mercer Capital. Olivia did not follow the news about him. She had Rachel monitor it instead, filtering out anything that was not absolutely essential for her to know. It was easier that way. Healthier, like keeping a wound covered so it could heal without constant irritation. At work, she started a secret blog. Anonymous, of course. She called it Phoenix Rising and wrote about rebuilding after devastation. About starting over when everything you thought you knew turned out to be a lie. About finding strength you did not know you had. The posts were raw and honest and struck a chord with readers going through their own disasters. Within 2 months, she had 50,000 subscribers. Within 3, she had a literary agent reaching out about a possible book deal. She did not mention the pregnancy on the blog. Some secrets were still too precious to share. One evening in late January, Olivia was working late at the office, trying to finish a presentation for a client meeting the next morning. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. The cleaning crew had already come and gone. She was alone with her laptop and her cold coffee and the distant hum of the city outside. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. She almost ignored it. Spam, probably, or a wrong number. But something made her open it. The message was brief. I know you are pregnant. We should talk. Meet me tomorrow at Cafe Lucia, noon. Come alone. Her blood ran cold. Someone knew. Someone had found out, and now they were contacting her with an anonymous message, demanding a secret meeting. It had to be Vanessa. Some new scheme to destroy her. Some fresh ammunition for the campaign of harassment that had never fully stopped, just gone underground. She called Rachel immediately. Do not go, Rachel said flatly. It is a trap. Obviously. What if it is not? What if someone knows something, has proof of something? Then they can contact you through proper legal channels, through me. Showing up alone to meet some anonymous person who knows your biggest secret is textbook terrible decision-making. Rachel. Olivia's voice was tired. What do I have left to lose? My reputation is already destroyed. My marriage is over. I am barely surviving on my salary and hiding a pregnancy like it is a crime. At least if I go to this meeting, I will know who my enemy is. You do not even know if it is an enemy. It could be a friend trying to help. Friends do not send anonymous cryptic messages demanding secret meetings. Some friends do, Rachel muttered, but she knew she had lost the argument. Olivia arrived at Cafe Lucia the next day with her heart pounding and her hand resting protectively on her barely visible bump. The cafe was a small Italian place in the West Village, the kind of intimate space where conversations could be had without being overheard. A man was already waiting at a corner table. He stood when she entered, and she realized with a shock that she recognized him. Marcus Webb, Julian's estranged older brother. She had met him exactly once, briefly, at an engagement party. He had seemed nice enough then, though distracted. Julian had dismissed him with a wave, calling him the black sheep who chose poverty over family. She had not thought about him since. Miss Bennett, Marcus said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Thank you for coming. Olivia sat slowly, keeping her distance. How do you know about the baby? I have sources. Let us leave it at that for now. More importantly, I know what my brother did to you, and I know what Vanessa Cole is really after. Which is what? Revenge for some imagined slight? No. Marcus's expression was grave. Money, power, control. The same things everyone in my family is after. But Vanessa's playing a longer game than Julian realizes. And you, Miss Bennett, are caught in the middle of it. Olivia studied him carefully. He looked nothing like Julian, older, rougher around the edges with none of his brother's polished veneer. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, no designer labels in sight. His eyes were tired, but honest. Why should I trust you, she asked. You should not. I am a Mercer. Trusting us is how you ended up in this situation in the first place. But I am going to tell you some things, and you can decide for yourself what to do with the information. He told her about the embezzlement. $2 million siphoned from client accounts over 3 years. Julian's desperate attempts to cover it up. Vanessa's discovery of the scheme 2 years ago, and her calculated decision to use it as leverage rather than expose it. The affair started as blackmail, Marcus explained. Vanessa threatened to go to the authorities unless Julian did what she wanted. What she wanted initially was money and access. But eventually she decided she wanted him too. The real him, not just his resources. And the wedding. Julian thought marrying you would solve everything. He would look stable and respectable. Vanessa would see that she could not have him. The whole mess would go away. Marcus shook his head. He underestimated her. She gave him an ultimatum the week before your wedding. Divorce you publicly, humiliate you completely, or she would release everything. Olivia absorbed this. It was horrible and twisted and made in a sick kind of sense. So I was never even a person to him, she said quietly. Just a prop in a play I did not know I was in. I am sorry. Marcus sounded like he meant it. My brother is weak. He has always been weak. But that does not excuse what he did to you. Why are you telling me this? Because my grandmother, Eleanor, controls the family trust. She is the real power behind the Mercer name, and she does not know about any of this. The embezzlement, the blackmail, Vanessa's manipulation. If she found out, everything would change. Olivia's mind raced. You want me to tell her? I want you to have options. You are about to have a baby who is technically a Mercer heir. That gives you leverage if you choose to use it. Eleanor is ruthless, but she cares about the family legacy. She would not allow Julian's child to be raised in poverty while his father lives in luxury. And if she decides I am a threat, then you need to be prepared for that too. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a thumb drive. This contains everything. The evidence of the embezzlement, records of Vanessa's blackmail, proof that Julian knew about all of it. Use it however you want, or do not use it at all. That is your choice. Olivia took the drive, turning it over in her hands. It felt impossibly small for something so potentially explosive. Why are you helping me? She asked again. What do you get out of this? Marcus stood, leaving money on the table for his untouched coffee. I get to watch my brother face the consequences of his actions for once in his life. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me vengeful. But after what my family did to me, I have earned a little petty vengeance. He walked out without looking back. Olivia sat in the cafe for a long time, staring at the thumb drive, wondering if she was holding salvation or destruction in her hands. She did not know yet that it was both. 2 months after her meeting with Marcus, Olivia made her decision. She was 6 months pregnant now, visibly so, with no hope of hiding it any longer. David Park had figured it out weeks ago and responded with characteristic kindness, offering flexible hours and the option to work from home when needed. Her blog subscribers had grown to over 100,000. The book deal was slowly materializing into something real. Life was not good exactly, but it was sustainable. She had built something from the ashes of her old existence. But the Mercer situation hung over everything like a storm cloud that refused to break. Rachel had spent weeks analyzing the information on Marcus's thumb drive. The evidence was damning, thorough, and verifiable. If released to the right people, it would destroy Julian professionally and potentially land him in prison. The question was whether to use it. I could just walk away, Olivia said one evening. She was lying on Rachel's couch, her swollen feet propped up on pillows. Have the baby, raise him quietly, never contact the Mercers again. They do not know I am pregnant. I could keep it that way. For how long, Rachel asked. These things come out eventually, and when it does, you will be in a much weaker position than you are now. Better to control the narrative than let someone else write it for you. What do you suggest? Go to Eleanor directly, show her the evidence, explain that you are carrying Julian's child and that you want nothing from them except to be left alone. Appeal to her sense of legacy, and if she decides to destroy me instead, then we release everything publicly and take our chances with the court of public opinion. It was a gamble. Everything was a gamble when you were playing against people with unlimited resources and no conscience. Olivia scheduled a meeting with Eleanor Mercer. The Mercer estate in Connecticut was exactly as intimidating as she had imagined. Stone walls, iron gates, security cameras tracking her car as it wound up the half-mile driveway. The house itself was more castle than home, all turrets and ivy and old money pretension. A butler escorted her to a study lined with leather-bound books that looked like they had never been opened. Eleanor Mercer sat behind an antique desk, perfectly composed despite her 80 years. Her silver hair was immaculately styled, her pearl earrings probably worth more than Olivia's annual salary. Mrs. Bennet, Eleanor did not rise or offer her hand. I was surprised to receive your request for a meeting. I assumed you would have learned by now that associating with this family brings nothing but pain. Olivia remained standing. She had dressed carefully for this meeting in a professional maternity dress that made no attempt to hide her condition. If she was going to play this card, she was going to play it openly. I have information you need to see, Olivia said. She set the thumb drive on Eleanor's desk. About your grandson, about what he has really been doing with the family money. Eleanor's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Interest? Wariness? Maybe both. She inserted the drive into her computer and spent several minutes reviewing the contents. The room was silent except for the clicking of her mouse and the ticking of an antique clock. When Eleanor finally looked up, her face was unreadable. "This is quite a collection," she said. "Where did you get it?" "Someone who wants to see Julian face consequences for his actions." "My grandson Marcus, I presume. He always was the idealistic one." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, studying Olivia with new appreciation. "And the pregnancy? I assume that is Julian's child you are carrying?" "Yes, a boy, due in 3 months. What do you want, Mrs. Bennet?" "Money, recognition, a seat at the family table." "I want to be left alone." Olivia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I want Julian and Vanessa and this entire family to stay away from me and my son. In exchange, this evidence stays between us. No authorities, no press, no public scandal." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and pressed a single button. The study doors opened. Julian walked in. And behind him, Vanessa. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. She had walked into a trap. A carefully laid trap that she should have seen coming from a mile away. "Did you really think I did not know about the embezzlement?" Eleanor asked, her voice cold as winter. "Who do you think helped him hide it? The Mercer name is worth more than $2 million, and it is certainly worth more than you." Julian would not meet her eyes. Vanessa was smirking, clearly savoring every moment of Olivia's horror. "Here is what is going to happen," Eleanor continued. "You are going to sign documents relinquishing all parental rights to the child you are carrying. In exchange, you will receive $500,000 and the opportunity to disappear. New city, new identity, a fresh start funded by Mercer generosity. And if I refuse, then we will destroy you." Eleanor's smile was reptilian. "We will drag you through family court for years. We will prove you are an unfit mother. We will document your instability, your obsessive behavior, your history of deception. By the time we are finished, you will not have custody of a houseplant, let alone a child." Vanessa stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We have documentation of your mental health struggles, Olivia. The depression after the divorce, the obsessive blog posts about rebuilding from devastation. It paints a picture of someone who is not emotionally stable enough to raise a child." They had been watching her, tracking her, building a case against her, even as she thought she was rebuilding in secret. Olivia looked at Julian. She searched his face for something, anything, some hint of the man she had married, the man who had once looked at her like she was precious and worth protecting. He looked away. "I need time to think," Olivia said. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, distant and calm despite the terror screaming through every nerve. "You have 24 hours. Eleanor pushed a folder across the desk. "The documents are ready whenever you are." Olivia took the folder with numb fingers and walked out of that house on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. She made it to her car before the tears came. Great heaving sobs that shook her entire body, that made her feel like she was coming apart at the seams. Her hands trembled so badly she could not grip the steering wheel. She had been so stupid, so naive. She had walked into this thinking she had leverage, thinking she could negotiate from a position of strength. But you could not negotiate with people who held all the cards and had no conscience about how they played them. She called Rachel, barely able to speak through the tears. "I am coming," Rachel said immediately. "Where are you?" "Mercer Estate. Parking lot." They knew. They knew everything. "Marcus set me up. Stay there. Do not move. I am on my way." Olivia sat in her car as the sun set over the Connecticut countryside, her hand resting on her belly, where her son kicked and turned, oblivious to the danger surrounding them both. She had never felt more alone in her entire life. The 24 hours passed without Olivia signing anything. Instead, she huddled in Rachel's apartment, surrounded by legal documents and takeout containers and the wreckage of every plan she had ever made. Rachel had called in sick to work, something she never did, and was pacing the living room like a caged animal. "We can fight this," Rachel kept saying. "They do not have as much ammunition as they think they do." The blog posts are not evidence of mental instability. The depression after your divorce was a normal human response to trauma. "They have unlimited money," Olivia said hollowly. "They have connections in every courtroom in the state. They have Vanessa, who has already proven she can fabricate whatever evidence she needs. What do we have? We have the truth. The truth does not matter, Rachel. It never mattered. Vanessa told lies for 5 minutes and destroyed my entire reputation. Julian told lies for 6 months and destroyed my entire life. The truth is worthless against people who control the narrative." Rachel stopped pacing. She sat down across from Olivia and took her hands. "Then we change the narrative." "How?" "We go public first, before they can. We tell your story, your real story, with documentation to back it up. We release the embezzlement evidence to the press, to the affected clients, to everyone who needs to know. We burn their house down before they can burn yours, and risk losing my son in the crossfire." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that cut through all of Olivia's defenses. "Oh, what kind of life are you giving him if you let the Mercers win? If you sign those papers and take their money and disappear, what lesson are you teaching him? That it is okay to be bullied into silence. That powerful people can do whatever they want and the rest of us just have to accept it." Olivia felt the words land like physical blows. She looked down at her belly, at the life growing inside her. "I promised him I would protect him," she whispered. "On the day I found out I was pregnant, I promised I would protect him no matter what. Then protect him, fight for him, show him what his mother is made of." Something shifted inside Olivia, something that had been dormant since that horrible night in the honeymoon suite, buried under grief and fear and survival mode. Anger, pure, clarifying, righteous anger. She had done nothing wrong. She had been lied to, manipulated, humiliated, and now threatened with losing her child. And she had taken it, all of it. She had tried to be reasonable, tried to negotiate, tried to play by rules that her enemies did not even recognize. No more. "Okay," Olivia said. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. "We go public. All of it. But we do it right. We need a journalist who cannot be bought. We need to get the evidence to the affected clients, the pension fund, before the Mercers can spin their version. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us." Rachel smiled grimly. "Now you sound like someone who is ready to fight." "I am ready to win." They worked through the night. Rachel reached out to a journalist contact at the Times who had a reputation for bringing down corrupt institutions. Olivia compiled a timeline of everything that had happened, from the wedding night through the meeting at the Mercer estate, with documentation for every claim. By morning they had a plan, but plans, as Olivia was about to learn, rarely survive contact with reality. Her phone rang at 7 a.m. An unknown number, but she answered anyway. "Miss Bennett," the voice was male, familiar, stressed. "This is Marcus Webb." Olivia's grip tightened on the phone. "You set me up. You sent me into that trap." "No, that is what I need to explain. I did not know they were monitoring me. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. But I got out, and I have something you need. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I have my grandmother's private server backup. Everything. Every email, every financial transaction, every communication she has had for the past 5 years. It proves she was the architect of the embezzlement, not Julian Eichmann. He was just following her orders." Olivia's mind raced. If that was true, if she could prove Eleanor was the real criminal, then the threat against her collapsed. Eleanor could not drag her through court while fighting her own legal battles. "How do I know this is not another trap? You do not. But I am going to send you the files right now. Review them yourself. If you think I am lying, delete them and never speak to me again. But if I am telling the truth, then we can help each other destroy the people who have destroyed us both." 15 minutes later, Olivia's laptop pinged with an incoming encrypted file transfer. She and Rachel spent 3 hours reviewing the contents. It was everything Marcus had promised, and more. Eleanor Mercer had not just covered up Julian's embezzlement. She had orchestrated the entire scheme, using her grandson as a front to steal $14 million from clients who trusted the family name, the pension fund for teachers, a children's hospital foundation, a veterans assistance program. She had targeted organizations that would be reluctant to make a fuss, and she had stolen from them systematically for half a decade. Holy ground, Rachel breathed. This is not just criminal. This is monstrous. Can you imagine being one of those teachers? Olivia's voice was hard. Working your whole career, counting on your pension, and finding out some billionaire grandmother stole it to add another wing to her mansion. We have to release this. We will. But we need to be smart about it. These clients deserve to know what happened before it becomes a media circus. They deserve the chance to decide how they want to proceed. Rachel started making calls. By the end of the day, they had contacted representatives from all three affected organizations. The response was immediate and volcanic. Within a week, a coordinated legal assault began. 3 separate lawsuits were filed against Eleanor Mercer and Mercer Capital. The FBI opened an investigation. Forensic accountants descended on the family's finances like locusts. And then the story broke. The Times ran it as a front-page exclusive. Billionaire matriarch accused of stealing from teachers, veterans, and sick children. The article was thorough, documented, and devastating. It included quotes from victims, financial records, and a timeline that left no room for alternative interpretation. Eleanor Mercer was arrested at a charity luncheon 2 days later. The photos went viral. The internet, which had once united to destroy Olivia, now united to celebrate her destruction. But Olivia did not celebrate. She sat in her small apartment in Jersey City, watching the news coverage with a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. The Mercers were burning. Everything they had threatened her with was now consuming them instead. And somewhere in that burning empire, Julian Mercer was making a decision that would change everything one final time. The call came 3 days after Eleanor's arrest. Olivia was at home, trying to rest on doctor's orders. The stress of the past weeks had taken a toll, and her blood pressure was elevated enough that her OB had insisted on bed rest for the final month of pregnancy. Rachel screened all her calls now, but this one she handed over with a complicated expression. "It is Julian," Rachel said. "He says he needs to talk to you. In person. Today." Olivia's first instinct was to refuse, but something in Rachel's face made her pause. "He says it is urgent," Rachel continued. "He says it is about the baby. What could he possibly have to say about the baby now?" "I do not know, but he sounded different. Oh, scared. Maybe even genuine. Although with him, it is hard to tell." Olivia took the phone. "Julian." "Olivia." His voice was rough, stripped of its usual smooth confidence. "I need to see you, please. There is something you need to know. If this is some kind of legal strategy, some attempt to gain advantage in the custody case, there is not going to be a custody case." His laugh was bitter. "I am dropping all claims. I am signing whatever documents you need to give you full parental rights. But I need to see you first. I need to explain why." Something in his tone made her believe him. Against every instinct, against all evidence of who this man really was, she believed he was telling the truth. "1 hour," she said. "My apartment. Rachel will be here." "Fine, whatever you need." He arrived looking like a stranger. The polished hedge fund manager was gone, replaced by someone gaunt and gray and impossibly tired. His expensive suit hung loose on a frame that had lost at least 20 pounds. Dark circles shadowed his eyes like bruises. Rachel positioned herself between them, arms crossed, ready to physically intervene if necessary. But Julian made no move toward Olivia. He just stood in the doorway, looking at her belly, at the life they had created together, with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Regret, real devastating regret. "Can I sit down?" he asked quietly. Olivia gestured to a chair. He sank into it like his legs could not hold him any longer. "I am dying," Julian said. There was no preamble, no softening, just the blunt truth. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. They found it 3 weeks ago. 6 to 12 months, if I am lucky." The words did not compute. Julian Mercer, 36 years old, obscenely healthy, absurdly wealthy, dying. "That is not possible," Olivia heard herself say. "I wish you were right." He pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket and handed it to Rachel. "Medical records, test results. You can verify with the oncologist if you want. Rachel scanned the papers, her legal mind switching to assessment mode. When she looked up, her expression had changed. This is real. Julian nodded. I found out right after the lawsuit started, while my grandmother was being arrested, while everything my family built was collapsing around me. Poetic timing, really. Olivia did not know what to feel. This man had destroyed her life, had stood by while his mistress and grandmother tried to take her child, had made vows he never intended to keep and left her shattered on a hotel room floor. But he was also dying, and there was a baby inside her who would never know his father. Why are you here? She asked. What do you want from me? I want to meet him. Julian's voice cracked. Just once. When he is born, I want to hold him and tell him I am sorry for what I did to his mother. I want to see his face before I die. Olivia felt Rachel stiffen beside her, ready to refuse on her behalf, but something made her hold up her hand. You do not deserve that, Olivia said slowly, after everything you did. I know. You hurt me in ways I am still discovering, in ways I will probably carry for the rest of my life. I know that too, so tell me why. Not the excuses, not the justifications. The real reason you destroyed our marriage on our wedding night. Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I was terrified. Of what? Of being happy. Of having something real. Of being seen for who I actually am, not the image my family created. Julian leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. My grandmother raised me to believe that love was weakness, that emotional connections were liabilities to be exploited. I learned early that the only way to survive in my family was to never let anyone get too close. And then you met me. And then I met you. And you were kind and genuine, and you looked at me like I was actually worth something. And it terrified me, Olivia, because I knew deep down that I was not the man you thought I was. I was a coward and a liar and a thief, just like everyone else in my family. I did not deserve your love, so you destroyed it instead. Olivia's voice was hard. Rather than risk me seeing the truth, you burned everything down first. Yes, and Vanessa. Vanessa was easy. She never expected me to be good. She knew exactly what I was and wanted me anyway. There was no risk of disappointing her because she had no expectations beyond money and status. With her, I could be the monster my grandmother raised me to be. The room was silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside. Rachel spoke first. This does not change what you did, or what your family tried to do. No, Julian agreed, it does not. But I am asking anyway. Not for forgiveness. I do not deserve that. Just for the chance to meet my son. Once. Before I die. Olivia looked at this broken man who had once seemed so invincible. She thought about her son, about the questions he would ask someday about his father, about what she would tell him. She thought about forgiveness and revenge and all the complicated territory in between. If I let you meet him, she said finally, you need to understand something. I am not doing it for you. I am doing it for James, because someday he's going to ask about his father, and I want to be able to tell him that you at least tried, at the end, to do one right thing. James, Julian's voice broke. You named him James after my father, the man who taught me what a real father looks like. Julian closed his eyes. Tears tracked down his cheeks, and for the first time since she had known him, he did not try to hide them. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, Olivia. Do not thank me yet. She stood, signaling that the meeting was over. You have not met him yet. And if I get even a hint that you or anyone from your family is trying to use this baby for legal leverage, the offer is off the table permanently. Do you understand? I understand. Julian left her apartment that day looking somehow both older and lighter, like a man who had finally set down a burden he had been carrying his entire life. Olivia watched him go and wondered if she had made the right decision. 3 weeks later, James Marcus Bennett was born. The contractions started at 3 in the morning. Olivia had been dreaming about water, about swimming through dark currents toward a light she could not quite reach. She woke gasping, disoriented, her sheets damp with sweat. Then the pain hit, and she understood. Rachel had been staying on her couch for the past week, ready for exactly this moment. She materialized in the doorway before Olivia could even call out. Is it time? Rachel asked. Already grabbing the hospital bag they had packed and repacked a dozen times. I think so. Olivia breathed through another contraction. Yes, definitely. Go time. The drive to New York Presbyterian felt endless. The city was dark and quiet, that strange pocket between very late and very early when even Manhattan slept. Rachel kept up a steady stream of chatter, questions about breathing techniques and ice chips and whether Olivia wanted drugs or wanted to try natural, all designed to distract from the increasingly intense waves of pain. The hospital was expecting them. Olivia had pre-registered weeks ago and the staff moved with efficient calm, getting her settled in a delivery room and checking her progress. You are already 6 centimeters, the nurse announced cheerfully. This baby is ready to meet you. The next several hours blurred together into a haze of pain and pressure and the steady beeping of monitors tracking her son's heartbeat. Rachel held her hand through all of it, coaching her through each contraction, reminding her to breathe when the pain made her forget. At some point, she became aware of her phone buzzing persistently from her bag. Rachel silenced it, but Olivia caught a glimpse of the screen. Who is it? She managed between contractions. Rachel hesitated. Marcus. He says it is urgent. Something about the story dropping. The expose. In the chaos of labor, Olivia had almost forgotten that today was the day the full investigation results were being released. The coordinated media coverage that would finally lay bare everything the Mercer family had done. Tell him it will have to wait, Olivia gasped as another contraction hit. I am a little busy, Rachel relayed the message, but her expression remained troubled. The Mercers are responding. They are trying to get ahead of the story. Julian is apparently cooperating with investigators, turning on his grandmother. Good for him. Olivia bore down against the pressure. Whatever happens out there, it is not changing what is happening in here. My son is coming. Nothing else matters right now. She was right. Nothing else did matter. At 11:47 a.m., after 18 hours of labor, James Marcus Bennett entered the world screaming. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes. A full head of dark hair that looked nothing like Julian and everything like Olivia's father. When they placed him on her chest, still wet and wailing, Olivia felt something click into place inside her, a completion she had not known she was missing. Hi, baby, she whispered. I have been waiting for you. James stopped crying and looked up at her with unfocused newborn eyes. He could not see her clearly, she knew. His vision was still blurry, his brain still learning to process the overwhelming sensory input of the world outside the womb. But somehow, impossibly, he seemed to recognize her voice. He settled against her skin with a soft sigh, and Olivia cried. Happy tears, finally. The first happy tears she had shed in almost a year. Rachel was crying too, standing beside the bed with her phone hanging forgotten in her hand. He is perfect, Rachel said. Absolutely perfect. I know. Olivia could not stop staring at him. I know. The next few hours were a blur of visitors and procedures and the constant cycle of feeding, changing, sleeping. Olivia's room filled with flowers from David Park and her co-workers at the agency. Rachel fielded calls and texts from what seemed like hundreds of people, all wanting updates on the baby. And outside, the story broke. Olivia caught pieces of it from the TV, mounted in the corner of her room, volume low so as not to disturb James sleeping in his bassinet. The coverage was extensive. Eleanor Mercer's arrest, the FBI investigation, the victims speaking out about what had been stolen from them, and teachers who had lost their retirement savings, veterans who had been counting on assistance that never came, parents of sick children who had donated to a hospital foundation that had been systematically looted, and Julian's cooperation, his testimony against his grandmother, his decision to turn over everything he knew in exchange for a reduced sentence. The man Olivia had married, the man who had destroyed her life, was finally doing the right thing. Whether out of guilt or fear or genuine transformation, he was helping to bring down the empire that had created him. Late that evening, after Rachel had finally gone home to shower and rest, there was a knock on the door. Olivia looked up to find Julian standing in the doorway. He was not alone. 2 FBI agents flanked him, clearly assigned as escorts. His wrists were not cuffed, but there was an unmistakable air of custody about the whole arrangement. 5 minutes, one of the agents said. That is all we can give you. Julian approached the bassinet slowly, like he was afraid of spooking a wild animal. He looked down at his son, and his entire face transformed. "He is beautiful," Julian breathed. "He looks like you." "Thank God for that." Julian huffed a surprised laugh. "Fair enough." He reached out one hand, hesitating just above James's sleeping form. "Can I?" Olivia nodded. Julian touched his son's cheek with one finger, so gently it barely made contact. James stirred but did not wake. "I am sorry," Julian whispered. He was talking to the baby, not to her. "I am so sorry for what I did to your mother. She deserved so much better than me. You deserve so much better than me. But I promise you, James, I am going to spend whatever time I have left trying to make things right. I am going to make sure you are taken care of. I am going to make sure your mother never has to worry about anything again." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes despite herself. She blinked them back. Julian straightened and turned to face her. "I have set up a trust," he said. "My attorney has the details. Everything I have left after the legal settlements goes to James. It is not as much as it would have been, but it is enough to make sure he has opportunities. College, a house, whatever he needs. You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." Julian's gaze was steady. "It is the bare minimum, Olivia, the very least I can do." The agent shifted, signaling that time was up. Julian took one last look at his son. "Take care of him," he said. "Love him enough for both of us. I will." Julian walked out of that hospital room and out of her life. The next time she saw him, it would be in the newspaper obituaries, 4 months later. But that night, watching him go, Olivia felt something she had not expected to feel. Pete, the night bees. 1 year later, Olivia stood on the porch of her new house, watching James toddle through the grass on unsteady legs. The house was small, but perfect. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a kitchen with enough counter space to actually cook in. It was in a quiet neighborhood in Westchester, an hour from the city, surrounded by families who waved when they passed on their morning walks and did not know or care about her complicated history. She had bought it with money from the book deal. Phoenix Rising, a guide to rebuilding after everything burns down, had been published 6 months ago. The anonymous blog she had started in her darkest days had transformed into a phenomenon, and the book had climbed bestseller lists with an unexpected velocity that still surprised her. "Women related to it," Rachel had explained. "They saw themselves in your story. They found hope in your survival." Olivia was not sure she had intended to offer hope. She had just been trying to survive. But if her survival could help other women survive their own disasters, she would take it. James shrieked with delight as he caught a butterfly, then immediately released it when it tickled his palm. At 13 months, he was curious about everything, fearless in that way that only very small children could be, confident that the world was safe because his mother was watching. He did not know about the courtroom battles that had raged during his first months of life, did not know about his grandmother's conviction or his father's death, or the small fortune that now sat in a trust fund with his name on it. He knew only that he was loved, that there was always food when he was hungry, and comfort when he was scared. Olivia intended to keep it that way as long as possible. Rachel appeared beside her with 2 glasses of lemonade, settling into the other porch chair with a contented sigh. "This is nice," Rachel said. "Domestic. I almost do not recognize you." Olivia laughed. "I almost do not recognize myself." They sat in comfortable silence, watching James discover the fascinating world of grass and dirt and bugs. The afternoon sun was warm without being oppressive, the kind of perfect September weather that reminded Olivia of her wedding day. But the memory did not hurt anymore. It was just a fact of her history, like any other. Something that had happened. Something she had survived. "I heard from Marcus yesterday," Rachel said casually. Olivia's stomach did a small flip. "Oh." Marcus had testified extensively during Eleanor's trial, his evidence proving crucial to the conviction. Afterward, he had retreated from public view, dealing with his own complicated grief and the remnants of a family that had never really been one. They had stayed in touch. Occasional texts, the odd phone call. He had sent James a birthday present, a wooden rocking horse that James adored. There had been no romantic gestures, no declarations. Just a slow, careful building of trust between two people who had every reason not to trust anyone. He wants to visit, Rachel continued, next weekend. He says he has some business in the area and wanted to see how you are doing. How I am doing or how James is doing. Both, I imagine. Rachel grinned. The man is clearly smitten, oh. He just does not know how to show it because he was raised by emotional vampires. That is not funny. It is a little funny. James chose that moment to fall down, landing hard on his diapered bottom. He looked up with an expression of betrayed shock, then burst into tears. Olivia was beside him in an instant, scooping him up, murmuring comfort. He buried his face in her shoulder and clung to her shirt, his sobs already subsiding into hiccups. You are okay, baby. Mama has you. You are safe. He calmed quickly, as toddlers do, his attention already shifting to a bird hopping across the lawn. Olivia set him down and watched him toddle off in pursuit. When she turned back to Rachel, her friend was watching her with a soft expression. You are good at this, Rachel said. Motherhood, it suits you. I am terrified every single day. That is how you know you are doing it right. Olivia settled back into her chair, picking up her lemonade. The ice had mostly melted, but she did not mind. Tell Marcus he can visit, she said. If he wants. Rachel's grin widened. I already told him yes. Of course you did. Someone has to move this along. You two would dance around each other forever otherwise. Olivia rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. The butterflies in her stomach were not unpleasant. Marcus arrived the following Saturday. He looked different than the last time she had seen him, at Julian's small private funeral. Lighter somehow, despite the grief that still lingered around his eyes. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, and when he smiled at her from across the yard, something warm unfurled in her chest. James regarded the newcomer with deep suspicion for approximately 30 seconds before deciding that anyone who had brought him a stuffed dinosaur was acceptable. He spent the next hour showing Marcus his collection of rocks and sticks and other treasures, chattering in the half-formed language of toddlerhood. Marcus listened to every word with complete seriousness. They had dinner that night after James went to bed. Rachel had conveniently decided to spend the evening with friends in the city, leaving them alone. The conversation flowed easily. They talked about his plans for the future, about her book and the speaking engagements it had generated, about the quiet satisfaction of building something meaningful from the wreckage of their shared history. I want to be honest with you, Marcus said finally, setting down his wineglass, about why I am here. Olivia's heart rate picked up. Okay, I am not looking for something casual. I am not interested in some complicated arrangement that preserves everyone's independence at the cost of actual connection. I am too old for that. And frankly, after everything we have both been through, I think you are too. What are you looking for then? I am looking for someone to build a life with, someone real and honest and brave, someone who has been through the fire and come out stronger. I am looking for you, Olivia. I have been looking for you since the day I met you in that coffee shop, scared and pregnant and refusing to give up. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. Her mind churned through all the reasons this was complicated. He was Julian's brother. His family had tried to destroy her. There was so much history between them, so much potential for pain. But there was also this, a man sitting across from her, vulnerable and honest, and asking for nothing more than a chance. I am scared, she admitted. So am I. I have a son. He has to come first. Always. I would expect nothing less, and I am not the same woman I was a year ago. I do not know if I am capable of trusting someone the way I trusted Julian. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes intent. I'm not asking you to trust me like you trusted Julian. I am asking you to let me earn your trust, day by day for as long as it takes. I am asking for the chance to prove that not everyone who cares about you is going to leave. Olivia thought about all the moments that had led her here. The wedding night that should have destroyed her, the pregnancy she had faced alone, the battles she had fought against impossible odds, the son sleeping upstairs who had given her reason to keep fighting. She had survived all of it. She had more than survived. She had built something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let someone help her build something new. Okay, she said, we can try. Marcus's smile was like sunrise. That night, after he had gone back to his hotel, Olivia checked on James one more time. He was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur, his cheeks flushed with dreams. She leaned down and pressed a kiss to his forehead. "We are going to be okay," she whispered. "Better than okay. We are going to be happy." She finally believed it. 2 years later, on a warm September evening, Olivia stood in front of an audience of 300 women. The conference hall was packed. Every seat was filled, and more people lined the walls, all of them waiting to hear her speak. The podium in front of her held her notes, but she did not need them. She knew this story by heart. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. "Before I start on, I want to acknowledge something. Every single one of you has a story. Some of you are living through your disaster right now. Some of you are on the other side of it, looking back. Some of you are bracing for something you feel coming but cannot quite name yet." She paused, letting her gaze sweep the room. "My disaster started on my wedding night. My husband asked me for a divorce 6 hours after saying I do. He told me he loved someone else. He had divorce papers already drawn up, like our entire relationship was just a task on his to-do list." A murmur rippled through the audience. Even those who knew her story reacted to hearing it fresh. "I spent that night on a hotel room floor in my wedding dress, wondering how everything I believed about my life could have been so completely wrong. And then, the next morning, I discovered that his mistress had launched a coordinated campaign to destroy my reputation. Within a week, I had lost my wow, my savings, and any hope of being believed." She took a breath. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. The room was absolutely silent now. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I handled everything perfectly. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I walked into traps I should have seen coming. But I also did something right. I kept going. Olivia stepped out from behind the podium, moving closer to the audience. "Here is what I learned, and it is the reason I wrote my book and the reason I am standing here tonight. When your life burns down, you have two choices. You can let the fire consume you, or you can let it transform you." She thought about all the moments that had brought her here, the anonymous blog posts that had connected her to thousands of women facing their own disasters, the book that had climbed bestseller lists and generated letters from readers who said it had saved their lives, the speaking tour that had taken her to cities across the country, sharing her story with anyone who needed to hear it. She thought about James, now 3 years old, bright and curious and so full of joy that it sometimes brought her to tears. She thought about Marcus, who had proposed last spring in the same park where they had taken James for his first outing, who had promised to love her and James with everything he had. She thought about the woman she used to be and the woman she had become. "I want to share something with you," she continued. "Something I have never told anyone publicly before." The audience leaned forward collectively. "When I was at my lowest, when I had lost everything and was facing the possibility of losing my son too, I made a promise to myself. I said that if I survived this, if I somehow made it through to the other side, I would spend the rest of my life helping other women survive their own disasters." Her voice caught slightly, but she pushed through. "I did not know then what that would look like. I did not know I would write a book or give speeches or start a foundation to help women rebuild after betrayal. I just knew that my pain had to mean something, that I could not let everything I had suffered be pointless." She spread her hands, encompassing the room. "So here is my message to you tonight. Whatever you are going through, whatever disaster has found you or is about to find you, it does not have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of discovering who you really are when everything is stripped away, the beginning of building a life that is authentically yours, not defined by someone else's expectations or limitations." She returned to the podium, but did not pick up her notes. "I used to think love meant finding someone who completed me, who filled in the gaps in my soul and made me whole. My first husband taught me how wrong that was, but my current partner, the man I am going to marry next month, taught me something better. Real love is not about completion. It is about choice. It is choosing each other every single day, not because you need each other, but because you want each other, because your lives are better together than they would be apart." The audience was crying now. She was crying too, but she kept going. If you are watching this and you are in the middle of your own disaster, I need you to hear something. The pain you are feeling right now is real. The fear is real. The sense that you will never recover, that you will never be happy again, that is real too. But it is also temporary. I promise you, it is temporary. She smiled through her tears. The woman I am today could not exist without the disaster that created her. I would not trade my life now for anything, not even to erase all the pain I went through to get here. Because my son exists because of that pain. My book exists because of that pain. Every woman I have helped exists because I survived that pain. She took a final breath. You are going to survive too. I do not know how, I do not know when, but I know that you have more strength inside you than you realize, more resilience than you can imagine, more capacity for joy than you have ever experienced. Your Phoenix moment is coming. Just keep going until it arrives. The applause started slowly and built into something thunderous. Women were on their feet, crying and cheering and reaching out to touch her hands as she made her way through the crowd. After the event, Marcus found her backstage. He pulled her into his arms without speaking, holding her while she came down from the emotional high of sharing her story yet again. You were incredible, he said finally. I was terrified. That is how you know you are doing it right, she laughed, recognizing her own words echoed back to her. James is with the sitter, Marcus continued, but I promised him we would be home to read his bedtime story, so we should probably go. Olivia looked around the backstage area, at the flowers from well-wishers, at the stack of books waiting to be signed, at the evidence of a life she had built from nothing. Let us go home, she said. They drove through the darkening city, Marcus's hand warm on her knee. Olivia watched the lights blur past and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From that hotel room floor to this moment, from devastated bride to published author, from abandoned wife to beloved mother and partner, from woman who had lost everything to woman who had found herself. Julian was gone now. He had died 8 months after James was born, surrounded by strangers in a hospital room, having finally told the truth about everything his family had done. Olivia had not mourned him exactly, but she had grieved for the man he might have been if he had been raised by different people, if he had learned to see love as strength instead of weakness. Eleanor was in prison, where she would likely spend the rest of her life. The teachers had recovered most of their pension funds through civil litigation. The Children's Hospital had rebuilt its foundation with new leadership and strict oversight. Vanessa had disappeared from public view entirely. Last spotted working at a boutique in a small town in Arizona, a far cry from her dreams of marrying into billions. And Olivia was here, whole, happy, free. She thought about the 300 women in that audience tonight, about the thousands more who would watch the recording, about all the women in the middle of their own disasters, desperate for hope. She wished she could tell each of them personally what she had learned, that the worst moments of your life can become the foundation for the best ones, that the people who hurt you do not get to define you, that there is always a way forward, even when you cannot see it. She wished she could tell them that they were already enough, already whole, already worthy of love and happiness and everything they had ever dreamed of. But she had told them, tonight and in her book and in every speech she gave, and she would keep telling them for as long as anyone needed to hear it. Marcus pulled into their driveway. The porch light was on, warm and welcoming against the autumn darkness. Home, he said simply. Home, Olivia agreed. They walked inside together to the babysitter and the bedtime story and the ordinary, extraordinary life they had built, to James's sticky kisses and Marcus's steady love and the future stretching out before them like a promise finally kept. Olivia Bennett had been shattered, humiliated, abandoned, and nearly destroyed. She had lost everything she thought she wanted and found everything she actually needed. She had learned that family was not about blood or marriage certificates. It was about who showed up when everything fell apart. She had learned that the best love stories were not about finding your other half. They were about finding someone who reminded you that you were always whole. And she had learned the most important lesson of all, the one she would carry with her for the rest of her life, the one she would teach her son and share with every woman who needed to hear it. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing. Sometimes the fire that destroys you is the same fire that transforms you. Sometimes you have to burn all the way down before you can rise. But when you do rise, when you finally spread your wings and take flight, you become something new, something stronger, something beautiful, something that can never be destroyed again. Because you are a phoenix, and phoenixes do not just survive the fire, they are born from it.